What if you could become more confident by working on your voice, on how you sound, how you speak? Just by changing a few things with your voice and your vocal style and range, you can start to sound and feel way more confident. And that's going to give you a good grounding and edge for being a better speaker, presenter, and whatever else you might be doing professionally that involves you speaking. My guest in this episode is a speaking coach who focuses very much on voice and on helping you develop yours. He's got some great insights, some cool tips. I really enjoyed getting to speak with voice coach Jimmy Cannon. By the end of this episode, you'll have some tips and tricks to help you be able to sound more confident. And there's going to be way more to learn where that came from. And at the end of the episode, Jimmy and I will share with you how you can find out more and take this journey further if you would like to. If you are on YouTube right now watching this, please be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps the show a lot, especially if you leave a comment as well. So you can tell me how much you love the show or how much you hate it. Either way, it really makes a big difference and it means the world to me. If you're an audio-only podcast listener, please be sure to follow the show on your preferred podcast app and maybe even leave us a 5-star review if you enjoy the show. So welcome to Present Influence, the show for professional communicators who want to impact, influence, and inspire with their talks and presentations. My name is John Ball, keynote and communication coach, and your guide on this journey to mastery-level presentation skills. I'm very happy to welcome Jimmy Cannon to the Present Influence podcast. Jimmy, hi, how are you?
John, very well, very good. We've got some good weather here in the UK, which is nice, and it's a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, I'm happy to say we have here in Spain as well, which hasn't been recently. So yeah, we've both got good weather. That's always leaves us feeling good as well. I've been really looking forward to speaking to you. One of the main reasons for that, even though we have some similarities in what we do professionally, you very much focus on the voice in part of what you do. Can you tell us a little bit more about what your focus is and why you chose to go in on partly on focusing on voice?
Absolutely. Well, I started with thinking that I was going to be helping people who already experienced, like yourself, already doing speaking gigs and already doing stages, conferences, etc., and presentations, pitches, etc. So I thought I'd be working with top-level people, high-level people, and just helping them project their voice even further than they were already projecting their voice and their message. But what transpired, and I don't really know how it came about, I don't know how the seed came about, but what transpired were people coming to me with a feeling of that they weren't being heard, either a psychological feeling that they weren't being heard in meetings, or that there was a block, something stopping them. And I do this because this is generally around here, which is the somatic response to the anxiety that you might be feeling before you speak or during your speaking. And so people come to me, I've got a weak voice, I've got a thin voice, I don't like the sound of my voice. And then that sort of took me down another path of method, really, and how I was going to help people with that. So I ended up, I'm going off slightly at a piece here, but a bit of a tangent, but I ended up doing a master's in vocal pedagogy to find out more about the voice, the physiology of the voice. And I still don't know everything about the voice. It's endless, like everything you learn.
That's a keen interest to go and do a master's study.
Yeah. Well, the reason I did it actually was because I was teaching singing, and I've been a singer all my life, but I didn't really know how I was doing it. People say, how did you get that voice? I have no clue. I listened, I mimicked, I simulated, I innovated, whatever it might be. That's what I did. I think that's how we generally learn and improve.
Yeah. Because I think for our listener, you can hopefully hear this and tune into it, that do have a quite distinct resonance to your voice. And I think it's coming through even just in this conversation right now.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And of the checks in the post. But I suppose that's a natural thing. It's what I've been looking at trying to create is what's called a balanced phonation. So that is a balance, simply put, of breath and tone. And that's what Ingo Tietz, the guru of vocal pedagogy talks about is the creating that. And everything we're trying to achieve is to create that balance of breath and tone. So that's like an
Okay.
EQ on a hi-fi system.
Yeah.
You might want to think, well, actually, maybe I've got a nasally voice, or I speak from the throat, or my voice isn't deep enough, or it's too deep. You're trying to find that balance, and that gives people the confidence. So the more they feel confident about their voice, the more confident they're going to be to use their voice in
Mm.
different scenarios. And just going back quickly to what I was saying before, which was that what I help people now do is improve the quality of their voice and how they project, but also mitigate the anxiety that might be stopping them from speaking in the first place.
How much of a difference does that make when you're working with people?
It's huge. It's literally life-changing. I've had lots of clients say to me, not every client, but I've had lots of clients say to me, this has been completely life-changing, and not only professionally, but socially as well. So not just just in a bar, cutting through the crowd in a bar, social situations at dinner parties where you might not normally be listened to if you try to get in the conversation, and also professionally. So the professional thing really is my main focus, and that's to generally help people that are my sort of main avatar, which is all my marketing kind of focus is on. And that's really dependent on people that have come to me, but most people come to me seem to be in IT. So
Okay.
they're in IT, they're in middle management, they have got the opportunity to be promoted into senior management, which means more leadership requirements or expectations. So there's more meetings with stakeholders, teams, etc. So much more group activity, much more speaking to larger groups. And that's the change that I'm making, is either they've been promoted or they want to be promoted. And that can be a huge lifestyle, economic change in their lives.
Is this kind of helping people to find, to some degree, authority and influence through the tonality and power of their voice?
Yes, I believe that what we're trying to achieve from a physiological perspective is a balanced phonation, but when the result of that is an authentic connection between our cognitive mind and our physical body, and how we represent our emotions and our ethics. It's a bit
Yeah.
deep, I realize, that for this time of the day, but go on, yeah, go on, sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah,
I know what my listener is an intelligent soul, so
perfect.
that's
Yeah.
always good. Let me ask you that. I'm curious, like, is I'm having a bit of a chicken and egg conversation going on in my head, and
Mm.
we recognize it could be both. But is it? Do you think it's the psychology that leads to weaker voices, or weaker voices that leads to psychology, or is there just no way to know?
It very much depends on the client. My experience, that's a really interesting question, thank you. And my experience is that we actually need to deal with the psychology first. So that's whether that's the chicken, or the egg, I don't know. We can label it another time. But I feel that it's generally their perception. So it's generally one's perception of how they sound and how they feel that they're coming across, which is lack of self-confidence, imposter syndrome, lack of self-worth. Could be a behavioral experience that they've had years and years ago at school. We were all asked to stand up and say something in school. So it could be something like that needs to be sorted first, but it generally is in line with what I do with the voice. So the three pillars that I work with are the voice, presence, and confidence. And generally speaking, we need to work on the confidence first before we can then omit, if you like, presence through the voice.
Okay. It makes sense. And from that perspective, just to give us maybe a bit of an overview of what your client's journey might be.
Mm,
Um, when you start with the confidence, where do you begin? Does it
mm.
depend on who you're working with, or do you have a typical place that you normally start to dig into when you work with someone?
Absolutely. So the first thing that we do is establish values. So I not only studied voice, but I also studied acceptance and commitment therapy, which is and I'm just, if I can quickly explain what that is, because
Yeah,
actually
please.
5 6 years ago I had no clue what that was either. So it is a behavioral therapy. It's it comes from rational frame theory. It's very similar to cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. You reframes negative thoughts,
Yeah.
whereas acceptance and commitment therapy allows you to be aware or accept the negative thought, but nonetheless move forward based on your values, based on your values. So values in this situation are different to goals. Values are, for instance, could be, I want to spend more time with my family. So that could be a value that you have. It also could be a goal, but it's generally something that it determines who you are and what you represent. A purpose, your why, if you like, would be a value.
Yeah.
Whereas a goal is, I want to, in the next 5 years, I want to scale my company to a certain, whatever it is. That would be a goal. And then, so I start with committed action towards your values. So if you want to spend more time with your family, then what can you do at work? What can you do in life at work to put that into practice? How can you, what that might be, I'm going to reduce the meetings. I'm going to simplify the meetings, or I'm going to do something logistically to allow more time to establish that. So that might be linked to the way that you hold a meeting. It might be linked to the way you use your voice in a meeting. It might be that you don't talk so much. It might be that you pause more, you reflect more, you ask more questions, you delegate more. It might be something like that. These are all linked to how one communicates in this scenario that you might be. So I would start
Yeah.
with values.
Yeah. Values is great. I've been coaching for years, and values
Yeah.
is always a
I
very
I
important
do
element.
realize, John, I'm teaching grandma how to suck eggs here as
Oh
well.
no, but you're not here just to teach me, right? We're here to
No,
share. We're here to
of
share with
course.
everyone.
Absolutely.
But I'm learning new stuff from you because I've
Mm,
never heard of this therapy before. It sounds fascinating,
mm.
and then you get the impression you're a bit of a Renaissance man, Jimmy. So it's good to hear with all the studying
Yeah.
and diving deep into things. But one of the challenges that I sometimes found with working with values is people tend to want to dig into the values that they want to have rather than the ones that they do. Does that make a difference? Or do you have to elicit the values that they actually have beyond the ones that they wish they had?
I think, yes, that's definitely part of the process. And that's very interesting that you say that, because that is very common. It's a sort of a surface answer, isn't it? And sometimes you need to just create some space to allow them to explore that a little bit further. I think that's really interesting. Yeah, I wouldn't be able to talk more on that. I think that would be your side. And well, maybe you could tell me what that would be. What's your experience with that?
But in general, working with clients, we have to work a little bit to find out whether they are bringing up values that they actually have or whether they're just
Mm,
wishful thinking right now.
mm,
These I wish I had. And
mm,
one of the main ways we do that is that what is actually going on in your life? How is that value being represented in your life right now? That's usually where we'll find out whether it's whether it's a real value or whether
mm,
it's a desired value, because your values do actually impact your actions, your activities, and the choices of what you focus on in your day-to-day life.
yep.
And whilst you may want to change some of those things for various reasons,
Mm,
that will uncover your true values. Like, where are you spending the most time? Where does your focus mostly go?
mm,
Because
mm,
you might tell me want to learn and be a committed lifelong learner and
mm,
study and maybe do a master's or
mm,
something like that.
mm,
But if you're spending all your spare time watching YouTube and Netflix
mm.
and whatever else, that's where your values are right now
Yeah, it's very
on
interesting.
relaxation or entertainment. So
Yeah.
yeah, maybe a shift would be needed there.
And actually, values can be a distraction as well, as you said. So
Yep.
maybe watching YouTube videos and Netflix or social media, etc., could possibly be procrastination, something similar under the umbrella of social anxiety. Then you've got to explore a lot more. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, very fascinating.
But always a great place to start with people because values are somewhat foundational to how we show up.
Yep.
Once you start working on that, do you find that the values work that you do with people gets them to a place of confidence, or there may be more that you would still do that?
I think there's definitely more. And so once we've established the values, it would be a case of, well, how can we work? How can we work towards those values based on those? And what can we do? So, for instance, what I would suggest things would be, for instance, coming out of their comfort zone would be something like, could you volunteer to host the next meeting? Could you volunteer to do that workshop in October, which is
Right.
what one of my clients is going to do? And because before, she would never put her hand up and say, yeah, I'll do that. I'll do a workshop. I'll do half an hour workshop. So now it's like, we're working towards October. How does that make you feel? Well, that makes me feel fantastic because it's a relief. I'm actually feel like I'm moving forward to to achieve something based on my values? Or could it be that you want to join Toastmasters? So when you're in that environment, possibly the difference or the parallel shift, if you like, with what you and I do, contrast, would possibly be that in situ, there is a feeling of anxiety. There's the feeling of the somatic feeling, whatever the physical feelings might be. That's the experience. But that will be mitigated through mindfulness exercise, present moment exercises to reduce that anxiety, because the general concept is that the breath represents the value. So by focusing on the breath, doing mindfulness exercises, etc., when you're in situ, when you're in that environment and you feel nervous, it's going to be a lot less nervous, because the reason that you're doing that workshop in October is to improve your life in some way.
Yeah. One of the things I really love about all that you're saying here is that I've said for years that presentation skills training and public speaking training is much more of a personal growth tool than people realize.
Mm.
People think it's just about being able to get on stage and being a bit brave and speak up,
Mm.
and there's so much more to it
Mm.
that I think it's one of the fastest tracks to advancing leadership development that there potentially is.
Mm.
When you are reaching out, you lean very much into the transformational side of this as well, which is great.
Mm.
Are people coming to work with you primarily for that or primarily for the voice work?
Primarily, they're coming to me with the voice work, but it transpires. And I very rarely get someone who is completely confident with their presentation skills and that there is no anxiety. There's no feeling of, we all have anxiety or nerves. And it's a natural chemical, obviously, that we need to utilize and to manipulate and control. But most people come to me with a sense of anxiety or something that is a distraction, a cognitive fusion, if you like, that is distracting them from their goals or their purpose in that time, in that moment. So they come to me with feeling, I speak from my throat, I'm not being heard, I'm not being listened to, I can't work it out. I feel, you're a voice coach, I feel like I need to work with you on getting, this needs to free up. But the freeing up is actually connected up here. So it's definitely a holistic approach.
Yeah.
And it's definitely, so I very rarely do I had one client recently who's a barrister in Australia, and they were going from one courtroom to the next courtroom. The initial courtroom has microphones in, and the other courtroom doesn't have microphones. So we had 2 sessions where I just helped him project his voice. Obviously, in the discovery call, I asked him if there's anything else stopping you, or is there any block that is perhaps stopping you from speaking a bit more with more projection or more confidence. He says, no, I need physical help to be able to project my voice more. So that's what we worked on.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, there is some form of block or anxiety that is stopping them from being heard or their message being delivered.
So it sounds like people get a much deeper holistic experience than maybe if they just went to a typical voice coach.
Well, this is the thing, and this is when I started this. Because I'm subclinical. So I was trained in acceptance and commitment therapy, but I'm not a therapist. So I don't want to make that clear. So there are things that PTSD, for instance, I wouldn't touch. There's lots of things not subclinical that I wouldn't be able to explore with my clients. So that's pretty obvious. But that's an imposter syndrome thing for me. Perhaps I should have gone back and studied as a speech pathologist. But as far as I know, and my research tells me, that having this holistic approach is more beneficial because we do tackle a much wider body of the problem rather than a specific physiological issue. There's definitely behavioral and psychological things at play.
I can see that, and I really like it. It has a good feel to it. When you've done work on confidence with people and you feel like you're getting them at least closer to where they need to be, what would be next? Do you move into working on their voice and their projection with them, or is it the presence part?
Yes, absolutely. So the voice is directly connected to the vagus nerve. There's lots of research to say that both sympathetic and asympathetic nervous system are connected to the vagus nerve. So by using the voice as a tool to develop more confidence and to mitigate the anxiety is one way. It's very much a chicken and the egg, because the confidence will give your voice a bit more stage, if you like, and the voice, feeling more confident with the voice, will also give you more confidence, generally speaking, socially and professionally. So
Right.
they go hand in hand, but I generally start with the psychology side of things and then go into the voice. I always start with breathing, and that's something that I don't think I've ever not started with the breathing when I talk about the voice.
What do we need to know about breathing that you could see?
What don't you need to know, John, about breathing?
Well, hopefully I am right now. I think I am.
Oh, what, breathing?
Hmm.
Yeah, I hope so. Otherwise, yeah, that's it. Yeah, that wouldn't
Might
be
be
very
a short. It might be a short
good.
episode.
It would
Otherwise,
be a very short episode, exactly. So, well, most people speak from up there. They speak with an upper chest breathing. They speak short breaths. This is counterintuitive to what we're supposed to be doing. So, from about 6 months old, we tend to breathe incorrectly. So it's retraining people to speak correctly. And I'm hesitating because people might have heard it as diaphragmatic breathing, but it's actually abdominal breathing. So so just very quickly, we need to allow the lungs to expand and change pressure, and they need to transform the type of air that's going in and out. And to do that, we need to release the diaphragm, contracts and releases and lowers down, allowing the abdomen to lower down and the lungs to expand. To do that, we need to be very relaxed. We need to allow the belly to come out and be without any dignity, and just to let that happen and let other muscles expand and contract and relax as well. That's the first thing, is that we're generally not allowing enough breath in the lungs in the first place. And right. And actually, so deep breathing, generally through the nose, has been the research. The technique called Bottega technique has been proven to reduce the heart rate or lower the heart rate and give out endorphins as well, release endorphins. So it's a lot of upside about using just a deep breath in anyway. But when we're speaking, we need to then use that breath. So without that abdominal contraction, without that support of the breath on the out breath as we're speaking, we're not going to be able to achieve tonal variety, pitch variety, dynamic variety in our voice. And I say the word variety because it's not about just one pitch, one volume, one tone. It's about utilizing the tools in our voice to be able to express ourselves in the most effective way. So it always starts with the breath. You cannot project properly and safely without correct control over your breath.
Of course. I think if our listeners are anything like me, even just this little conversation now, you're probably finding yourself breathing a little more deeply because you're thinking about it. So it's having a bit more conscious awareness around it does make a difference. But can we perhaps train ourselves to a point where it does become more instinctive and natural to breathe more deeply and to be breathing properly more or all of the time, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing is to be aware. The first thing is to be aware of how you're breathing and how you can improve your breath. I think it's also just a learning curve as well, because we generally don't realize that we can use a lot more breath. We can control that breath for a lot longer time. There's some recent research to say that elongating the phrases as we speak, so really opening up the vowel sounds and the vowel quality, will reduce anxiety. There's a direct connection between the vagus nerve, the larynx, the abdomen, and that control over as we speak and elongate those phrases. So the answer to your question is unfortunately, practice. Like anything, it does need to become habitual. So right now, I've been a singer for a long time, and I do this day in, day out. So I'm completely oblivious. Everything is completely habitual to me when I'm speaking, and it's just a little bit of effort that I'm using to control the out breath as I speak. But initially, maybe a few weeks, you're going to really have to think about how you're controlling the breath, how you're taking your breath in, etc. So it is a muscle, or muscles that need to be trained, and muscle memory will eventually kick in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How long do you think it generally takes for most people to start to notice some change? Does that happen maybe in the first session where you work on voice?
I think the main thing, so the first session is really taking the energy away from the larynx. So most people speak from the throat. So they're speaking, I'm going to exaggerate the sound now, but they're speaking very much from the throat. The vocal tract is quite narrow, is constricted, and they might be this sort of thing all day. If you're speaking all day, every day, that's going to take a lot of strain on the vocal folds. So what's happening is too much vocal load going on. So what we do is, by using the breath properly, we can take away, hopefully you can hear the difference in my voice. It's a bit deeper and I can go even deeper and think about using that more chesty resonance as we're speaking. What I'm doing is I'm engaging the abdominal muscles, and I'm going to exaggerate that now. And this is what I call my vicar voice. I'm going into more of a chest resonance. And this is, thank you so much for coming. And that energy, that resonance there, takes away the acoustic energy from the vocal folds, allowing the resonance to, if you like, to broaden throughout the body. So that's the change. And normally, within the first session, there's a definite feeling of transformation in that way. And now the other transformations other sessions would be finding different areas of resonance to project the voice. So there's a couple of exercises. I have hundreds of exercises, but loads of exercises to project the voice in different ways.
Yeah. How much does projection matter when you are using a microphone? Does it still make a difference?
Yes, very good question. And I would say I'm still trying to not speak too loudly in this situation now. You and I are speaking, for those listeners who are just listening orally, into a microphone. And I still feel that I shout. I still feel that so my wife constantly reminds me, if I'm on the phone, to bring my voice down, because you're speaking too loud. So I'm very aware of the resonance of my voice, and perhaps it's too loud sometimes. And actually, I don't need to speak that loudly if there's a microphone, 6-7 inches away from my mouth. So however, and this is beautifully leading into, and I thank you for that, beautifully leading into presence, because what we want to do is create presence. And presence is an authentic resonance that you're creating in the space that you're in. So the space that I'm in now is my office here, my studio, if you like. And I'm trying to fill the space here as I'm speaking, but I'm also connecting to the microphone, but I'm also looking at you. I'm not always looking at you directly in the camera, but I'm looking at you because I want to see your nonverbal expressions and how you're responding to me. No pressure.
Yeah, I'm being analyzed. So
yeah, that's not at all. So I'm conscious of how I'm coming across. I'm conscious of how I'm coming. I'm also thinking that perhaps I haven't asked you this, John, but perhaps most of your listeners are listening in the car, maybe, or orally. They're not watching a video. I don't know.
Maybe. I like to think people listen to me while they're washing the dishes or at the gym. Or they could be doing anything.
Exactly. So I'm very conscious of how my voice is sounding, taking out 50% of our communication skills, which is nonverbal. So if we take that out completely and we're just doing a podcast like this, the voice is absolutely integral,
of course,
to communicating the energy and the passion that you have over your subject.
Now, I can remember earlier days of vocal coaching, the old Roger Love courses and stuff like that, which I'm sure people have done. I didn't love it, if I'm honest, but I've worked with some other vocal coaches as well. And one of the things that probably did help me a little bit, and then I know it made some changes for me, was being told to select like a vocal avatar, as it were. Like, who would you, if you could sound like anyone, who would you most want to sound like? And I've said this before on the show, but not for a long time, that Patrick Stewart was my vocal avatar.
Right, brilliant.
Such a deep, resonant, commanding voice. I don't think I sound anything like him, but I think I've moved a little bit more in that direction from having focused on that.
But here's the interesting thing, is that I'm always telling my clients to mimic. And it's such a great thing to do. And it's a very good idea to have that avatar. A lot of people come to me, well, I'd love to sound like this. We are limited to how we can sound because of our physiology of the larynx, right? So we're limited. I'm not going to sound like Barry White. It's just not going to, I've tried. It's not going to happen.
My voice does not go that low either.
No, exactly. Yeah. But I think not now, but maybe if you're up for it, but I could help you sound like Patrick Stewart. We'd have to study him for a little bit. But with Patrick Stewart, because he's a Shakespearean actor and obviously very famous, he's studied. He's absolutely studied acting and the voice and the communication that, with what he does. So with his voice, it is very forward placed. So he's very conscious. I'm trying to do it now, but he's very conscious of, well, probably not conscious now, but he would have been very conscious of how his voice is placed. So what I mean by that is that you can place it in, it's called a resonance ladder. So you can place it down here in the chest, you can place it in the throat, or you can place it very forward in the front of your lips, and it becomes much more articulated. And that would be the difference for you to focus on that. So forward placement more. I'll give you happy to give you some exercises on that.
I would love that. Yes.
So that's what I would say. The difference between your voice and his voice would be more forward placement and probably more resonance in the mask area. And it's really, again, finding that balance.
I think if I sounded more like Patrick Stewart, I would get a lot more speaking work. So,
do you think so? Do you think that?
I like to think that it's maybe
Let's
more
go
of
with
a,
that. Let's
more
go
of a
with
personal belief, I think. But no, I do really like that. Is it? I can remember hearing people teaching things like, this is in presentation training rather than vocal coaching, but teaching things like, if you have a soft or high voice, to try and bring it down. Is that something you would say is a good idea, or maybe a bit old school?
It is a bit old school. It is old school. Having said that, there's a lot of research that unfortunately dictates that a lower, more chesty resonance voice is going to sound more authoritative. And that's just the fact. So people perceive lower tone voices as more authoritative and having more credibility. So you can find a more lower, I'm doing it now. You can find lower tone or lower voice. It's generally resonance that you want to focus on, not pitch. So we will, as I said before, we have a certain physiological limitation to our voice, depending on the size of our larynx. So you will only go down to a certain note. And actually for singers, you can go a lot higher, but you can't go lower. And that's the same. If the speaking voice is the same as singing voice, it's just that you elongate the vowels more with singing. But you can add more tonal quality to the lower frequencies of your voice. So the difference is, I'm exaggerating now, if I'm speaking in my sort of nasal area, and some people speak like this, and I'm really exaggerating now. If I'm going into kind of a more of a witch sound.
Don't switch off, listener. We're not going to stay like this.
So from there, you can from there, you can open up the larynx, so you can go into you can literally send the resonance down into your chest area. And even if it's really high, you can still have a low tone in your voice. It doesn't have to be high pitch. It just has to be a lower frequency that you're adding to that sound.
Yeah, I love that. It's so clear to hear the differences that these things make as well. So it's very apparent for me and for our listener that these things, they make a huge difference.
Yeah,
I want to come back a little bit more to presence. We were talking a little bit, but started to move into that. And certainly for me and for a lot of people who teach presentation skills, we might look at presence a little differently. Do you focus on that primarily from the voice aspect of presence, or where do you begin that element with your clients?
Well, I was fascinated by a book by Patsy Rodenberg called Presence. And that was introduced to me, like all of us, from a friend who's in the same industry. And Jimmy, you have to read his book because she's an actress, and but it is all about, not all about the voice, but Patsy Rodenberg talks about I won't go into this in massive detail, but she talks about 3 circles. So first circle being perhaps maybe you're a little bit reticent to speak. Maybe there's some nervous and shyness, there's lack of confidence. And then the second circle is where we all want to be. That balance of authenticity and humility. And then the third circle is where you could come across maybe as quite slightly arrogant, perhaps narcissistic, toxic, maybe. And that comes across in quite an alpha male sounding voice. So if you're speaking quite loudly and you through the audience, as it were, So there's a few exercises that you can do to practice being in, and it goes back to, in fact, the environment that you're in. If you're in this environment, it's very different to being in an acoustic environment where, so it's a stage, virtual meeting room is a very different environment. So you need to practice these exercises within those environments, obviously, and they would have a different effect. But the idea is that we want to obtain second circle. That's the kind of the balance again. It's all about balance between those three types of people, if you like, based on their personality traits. So it's got a mixing. So it's how you represent yourself. So if I go into, so I live in I'm sure Cornwall. I live
A little.
in Cornwall, which is in England, southwest of England, and it's a very rural place. And generally speaking, hopefully there's no people. I'm Cornish, but I lived in London for a long time, so it's fine. I can. So the Cornish don't like people that put their head above the parapet, so shall we say? Generally,
Okay,
and I
tall
think
poppy kind of thing. Yeah.
that's right,
Yeah.
exactly. So you've got to be very careful if you walk into the local supermarket, and so when I walk in, I'm very conscious of that. I'm not sounding in third circle. I'm not. Hello there. Yeah. Do you have any avocados? Right.
Right.
You don't want to come across like that, which is an interesting conversation to note. Would be
Yeah.
that
I
we
was
can have
getting
another
I was
time.
getting a hint of, for those who might remember, Leonard Rossiter in that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I can't remember the scene. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. So I'm very conscious of how I sound. I do notice, it might just be an ego thing. I do notice if I walk into a shop and I'm queuing up and then I'm next and I can't think of an example. What would it be? I'm asking, can I get a coffee? My voice will carry more. It will be more resonant, and most of the coffee shop will look around and stare at me to think, who's this foreigner in our
Right.
land? So it's very, I so believe so deeply that the voice has such a strong connection between how you want to come across and how you do come across, and that balance of that authenticity that we're trying to portray, and humility.
I would definitely agree with that. I am one of those people, and this is, I think, a product of me being born in Manchester, having nearly all of my family come from Merseyside,
Right.
and having lived all sorts of different places around the UK. That my accent is very malleable. Like,
Mm,
it will change, and
yes.
sometimes it will it will change depending on who I'm talking to, and so it's more so with people from the UK. But it has happened when I spent a lot of years working with large groups of Australians,
Hmm.
and I started sounding a bit Australian.
Mm,
A long time in the US when I was a teen, and I started sounding a little bit American.
mm.
And I find this in conversations with people, I will start to naturally pick up their accent. And I don't do it consciously, but sometimes it gets pointed out to me, or I will notice it at some point. And okay, there is a thing of, we try to sound more like the people we want to connect with in some way. And
I think
it's
this is absolutely,
interesting.
yeah, it is absolutely fascinating. And we are all social chameleons, to a degree. And I'm really envious of the loud, middle-aged white man in the pub who's just got this really sonorous voice. Yeah, I think probably what we need to do is go back to the apartment and talk to Jenny about the cleaning lady or something like that. And I'm just, how you are completely oblivious to anybody else around you. And I
Yeah.
envy that, quite frankly. Or I might be another type of person, let's say, not middle class, who is on their phone on speakerphone in South London, right? And they're just chiming out, yeah, I saw him the other day. I'm not sure he's going to come back. I don't know, maybe, right? And they're completely oblivious of everybody around them. They are just in the moment. They are focused on that conversation, and they are focused about their problems and their strife. It's fascinating. I'm very self-conscious about how I come across, and that's something I need to work.
I always, you might be right, they're oblivious, but I think that in my head, there's always this assumption that they actively want people to be listening to them,
Sure.
but I could be wrong.
No, I think you're right.
Might be a complete obliviousness.
Yeah. Can I ask you, John, because something that I do day in, day out, forgive me for,
Ask
okay,
away.
great. You've got a very, because I listen to people's voices all day, every day,
Mm.
and I'm obviously fascinated with it. You have a very, how can I put this? You have a very controlled, mannered sound to your voice. It's very, generally don't go over a certain volume threshold.
Mm.
And it's a very empathic tone. And it's really easy to talk to you. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's nice feedback.
My pleasure. Yeah, yeah.
And I think that could be the result of years of having been working as a coach.
Right.
Could be.
I think it's absolutely that.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So, but if for example, like doing more stage work and more storytelling and doing more starting to do stand-up comedy,
Okay.
that might not be the best qualities to have in my voice when I'm doing
Right.
those things. So if I'm looking to make some changes there, where should I start to lean into?
Oh, very interesting. Okay. I love the way you brought that back to me. That's good. I like that. It's good. Very interesting. Yes. So, okay. So here's the thing. We are unaware of the potential volume and range of our voice. So one exercise I do is to speak in a whisper and then speak in a normal tone or volume and then speak very loudly. And most of the time, I'm not going to get you to do this. Most of the time,
You can. I don't
should
mind
we do this? Okay. So
yeah,
say
we can do
something.
vocal exercise.
Okay, great. Let's do it. So say whatever. Just say whatever you. Just tell me what you had to do before our call today, right? So before you do it,
okay.
yeah, no, before
Set
sorry, before you do it, I want you to say it in a whisper. Okay, so that means this is the kind of a multifunctional exercise, if you like. We are really focusing on the articulators, so our tongue, teeth, lips, hard palate, etc. And to do that, so if you're whispering, you really have to accentuate the consonants, right?
Okay.
So I want you to just 10 seconds in a whisper. Go.
I hope this comes through on the podcast, but I had to pack my bags and drive from Valencia city centre to a small village up in the mountains.
Perfect. Brilliant. So let's do it now in a normal tone. Your normal tone, as you've been speaking to me, that's really important. I think that is the main. So don't try to create anything at all. Just purely how you've been speaking. Don't start being all dramatic and with
No, I'm not going to go Shakespearean.
No, don't go Shakespeare. Yeah, just speak normally. Say the same thing.
Okay.
Not for what.
Okay, so I had to pack up my bags and drive from Valencia city centre up to a small village in the mountains.
Perfect. Right. So now what I want you to do, I want you to speak a lot louder. All right. And not shouting, but just doesn't have to be a lot louder, but quite a bit more energy. Okay. And normally I would show you how to do this with your abdominal muscles and then with that, right? So a little bit louder, same thing, and we'll see how that feels.
Okay, prepare yourself, listener. I had to pack my bags and then I had to drive from the city centre in Valencia up to a small village in the mountains.
Great. That is a perfect example. So how do you feel about the difference between either one of those three or particularly the last one?
The last one definitely felt much more like I was projecting. And I even felt maybe more resonance in that as well.
Yeah. For me, the main difference was energy. And please don't get me wrong. It's not like you're lacking in energy in your normal volume of voice.
It's been spoke, yeah.
But there was a lot more energy there. What's really interesting, and this is what I find quite often, is that the volume of voice for you, the perception probably from you is like, that's a bit over the top. It's a bit loud, maybe. It's out of my comfort zone. But actually the reality is that it's not much louder. If you were to measure that as an SPL level, then I bet you would find that it's not a huge difference. The engineer wouldn't be going, oh my word, I've got to bring down the fader down here.
I was conscious of not wanting to blow my listeners' ears out. If I got
of course, yeah. And I can imagine that you would be able to speak a lot louder if you're doing,
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
But yeah, well, I did a little bit of voice training years ago and doing some stage singing work and stuff. So the production stuff was super important.
Yeah.
I have one more voice related question because there's a couple of things I want to wrap up before we do close things off. But does it make a difference to have a wider range, a vocal range from deeper to high?
Absolutely. So the whole premise of what I teach is variety. So that is literally the spice of communication. And never used that before, never again.
Needs a bit of work.
Thanks, Tonya. So absolutely, we use generally 20% of our vocal range, our chest, for men, our chest register. So 20%, a fifth of what we could potentially use. So if you're doing a lot of speaking, a lot of presenting, a lot of pitching, etc., you want to present effectively, then using a lot wider, more broader range, pitch-wise, in your voice is actually going to be key to connecting with the audience. Our brains are tuned to being distracted very quickly and tuning out very quickly. And as well as I do that, if you're in the audience, you are thinking about 55 things at the same time. Have I put the washing on? Is the slow cooker is that going to be fine by the time
Did I
get
lock
back?
the door? Yeah.
Did I lock the door? All that stuff. Did I leave the car in the right place or whatever it might be? Right. So we are easily distracted about whatever that might be. So you have to absolutely keep the audience engaged. And one way to do that is variety of your register of your voice, as well as tonal variety, as well as dynamic variety as well. So speaking like you're speaking at the moment, which would be about this sort of volume, would be a very powerful way to bring the audience back. But also a little bit more energy occasionally, just to get, and also pace as well is an incredibly effective way to slow down and allow the audience to process, etc.
Love all that.
Yeah.
Honestly, this is so fascinating. I could talk about this for hours, and I think I'm pretty sure my listeners going to be enjoying all of this as well. I want to ask you about your singing a little bit, but before we do, maybe our listener might be wondering, maybe wants to check you out a bit more. What's the best way to find out a bit more about you and to maybe even get some deeper insight into what you do?
Sure, thanks, John. Well, jimmycannon.com is my website. Very simple. There are loads of links to, I've got a fantastic, I'm slightly biased, but it's a quiz that I use. It's devised by a company called Scorecard or Score App.
Oh yeah, Score App. Great. They're great. Yeah.
Very good. So, and I spent a lot of time really getting the questions right to the 3 pillars that I help people with. So if you wanted on the website, everywhere on the website, on my blog posts, at the top of the homepage, is a link to that quiz. It's a very useful, free resource to find out where you are with your voice, your confidence, and your presence. And then if you want to book a call, that's absolutely fantastic tool. We can have a call about where you want to go.
Well, I'm going to be taking the quiz, and I hope our listener will as well. Great. Thank you for sharing that as well. It sounds like a great resource. Let's come to your singing, because I know that you are a passionate singer. Tell us a bit about what kind of singing you do, and I guess you are still singing, right? Do you sing in a band? I would love to know about that.
Well, actually, so I've been a jazz singer for most of my life. I was a saxophonist, a jazz saxophone player, still am, and I'm not doing anywhere near as many gigs. Part of the reason that I started having singing lessons was I was doing 8 shows a week and touring and just working really hard, and my voice was straining. So that's where the beginning of my journey as a singing teacher and coach comes from. And then I transferred those skills into speaking. And so I'm predominantly a jazz singer. I have a project, or if you like, a band or project called Burton Bradstock, which is, if you're interested, is a village in Dorset. And
okay, I didn't know that, but yeah, okay,
there we are. And so that is an exploration of folk and jazz. So English folk music, which is tainted with some jazz harmony and arrangements. And that's something that I'm really passionate about. But my business is very prolific at the moment, and that's on a back burner, unfortunately. So, but it's definitely something
good problem to have. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So it's something I do want to start again. And I've got a big project in mind, which is song collecting, and then finding the songs in individual places around the country, and eventually going back to those places where I found the songs and I've arranged those folk songs to record, and then going back to do concerts. It's a big project. Yeah,
I
that's the plan.
have to connect you with my brother. I think he's involved in folk festivals in Dorset, and
No, you're
yeah,
kidding. That's
not
wow,
kidding
that's
at all.
incredible, John. What a small world it is. Yeah.
Fantastic. Jimmy, this has been such a pleasure. You've been a delightful guest, so informative as well. This is a fascinating topic and such an important element for speakers. Very often we just focus on what we're saying rather than how we're saying it and how we're
Sure.
delivering it. So I really love everything that you've shared with us today. And I think this episode alone is going to be a valuable resource for our listener, as well as all the other things that can go and check out from visiting your website. So I'd just like to say thank you so much for coming and being my guest today. Really appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure, John, and really lovely to meet you and speak to you. Wonderful. Hope we can do it again.
What a fun episode. I really loved chatting with Jimmy. And if you're like me, maybe you are even just having heard Jimmy talking about our breathing and our voice and our resonance and how we can change and play with our voice. At least have a play with this stuff. As I said, I think when we even just start thinking consciously about our breathing, we do tend to find ourselves breathing a bit more deeply, and we can start to focus on whether our voice is coming from our chest, from our throat, or from our abdomen, and try and adjust and play with it from that direction. To me, the whole concept that playing with your voice can massively change your confidence is exciting and interesting, and not something that I've really come across in this kind of way before. I hope you find it as interesting and as exciting as I do, because as professional communicators, our voice is our moneymaker. It's our tool, it's our craft, and it's the thing that needs to sound good. Now, I clearly have some stuff to work on if I want to sound a bit less coachy and warm and empathic when I'm doing stand-up or storytelling from the stage. And I'm going to be doing that. But I do think the whole concept of just projecting that little bit more from our abdomen, just turning that volume up, noticeable to us when we're doing it, but perhaps less noticeable when we are on the microphone or on the stage. It does turn the energy up. It impacts the excitement element. And when I work with people on their presence and on the things that actually connect with the audience, your energy, your passion, your emotion is all stuff that needs to come through when you're talking, because it's hard to connect with emotionless or professional sounding people who aren't letting those things come out in their conversation and are trying to sound a little too perfect or professional, and worried about being a little over the top or being perceived in a way that is less than the professional person that they want to be. Now, I'm not saying don't be professional in other aspects of your job, but this is following on from my episode last week about how professionalism often holds people back. This is really relevant to that, and how we use our voice is one of the ways that can make a big impact and difference to standing out from people, letting our emotion and our real self come through a little bit more, to stop limiting ourselves or holding ourselves back with energy and passion for what we're talking about. Obviously, we want that to be a little contained. We don't want our volume to be blowing people's eardrums out, for sure. And we don't want our energy to be making people's brains explode. Those are maybe a little, we don't want too much intensity, but we want a little more. We need to turn up the dials, and our voice is one of the ways that we can do that. And it's probably one of the most powerful ones, because you can still give talks and presentations and whatever else without being there in person, without being visible, without being, if all the lights went out in your presentation, you could still deliver it, especially if you can project your voice, if all the power's gone out. If you're doing something online and your camera goes off and you just can't get it to come back on, you can still do your presentation. Your voice is the most powerful part of what you do. And it's not just the words you say, it is absolutely the way you say them. I think this has been a lot of value. It's been an exciting episode and a wonderful direction to get into the show. I hope, please go and check out Jimmy Cannon's website, and probably we'll get Jimmy back on the show at some point, because I think there's more we can go into there and would love to have him back. But hey, look, I've been recording some really cool episodes this week. For my next episode, I'm going to be starting a bit of a series going through some of Robert Cialdini's principles of influence, and taking you into some of the other principles of influence and persuasion that he doesn't talk about. And after that, I've got plans for an exciting series on logical fallacies, rhetorical techniques. I'm going to be bringing you all. And YouTube is definitely going to be a great place to get that. So find Present Influence on YouTube if you're not already on here. All right, wherever you're going, whatever you're doing, have an amazing rest of your day. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.